Hey everyone, welcome to the video. I had been making plans with some friends of mine to go off-roading at Charlie's Creek in North Georgia for a little while. And we made this video to document the trip to Charlie's Creek, through Charlie's Creek, and then to kind of summarize our ideas at the end. So thanks for checking out the video, like and subscribe, and come along for the ride. Charlie's Creek is pretty close to Clayton, Georgia, as well as Hiawassee, and it's right up there close to the North Carolina border. If you are planning to travel to Charlie's Creek from, the Atlanta metro area, whether it's Fulton County, Gwinnett County, DeKalb, Cobb, Walton County, you just need to be aware that this drive is a 2-hour drive. A lot of that drive will be highway based. You will take, for the most part, Highway 85 north to 985. If you are using either Google Maps or Apple Maps, they can take you directly to either of the two starting points. There are two ways to get to Charlie's Creek. One is you can come from Persimmon Drive, and that drops you directly on the water crossing. And then there's the other way. You can take Highway 76 toward Hiawassee, and that would drop you on the other side, which means you would drive the Charlie's Creek Trail a lot longer, allowing you to do a little off-roading, if that's what you want to call it. But you'll be driving mostly on dry surface. A lot of the road coming in from Highway 76 is you transition from pavement to gravel and then to dirt. And then ultimately after you've driven for 4 miles on Charlie's Creek Road itself, you will get to the water crossing that takes you onto the other side, which is Tallulah River Road, which then takes you to Persimmon. So you have two ways to get to the creek. You can go in through Persimmon, which takes you to Tallulah River Road, and then you can do the water crossing onto Charlie Creek Road, or you can take 76 to Upper Hightower, which then takes you to Charlie Creek Road. You can take the road, the 4 miles, which then puts you at the water crossing to put you onto Tallulah River Road, and then you can leave via Persimmon. Or you can do what we did. We turned around, did the water crossing again, and left pretty much the same way we came in. In this video, I want to try to cover, a few things about Charlie's Creek. Where is it? What is it? How is it to drive? And then, at the end, what are my thoughts? Will I do it again? And I kind of started off by telling you where it is. It's up in North Georgia, close to North Carolina, between, Clayton and Hiawassee. The road itself, as I mentioned, kind of transitions from pavement to gravel and then onto dirt. Now, when it comes to dirt, there are different type of dirt services, right? So here in Georgia, a lot of our dirt roads are really red clay. And that's a little different from some of the sand you might see out in Nevada and California and some of the other places, that are well known for off-roading. The dirt here in Georgia, this red clay, can pretty much turn into mud real quickly as soon as it rains. It doesn't take a lot of water to turn this dry, hard-packed surface into mud that will have you stuck. So what this basically means is, first off, if you're going to try this road, make sure that you take a car that has some kind of height to it. You can do it with a Toyota Corolla. No one's going to stop you. There's no warning sign saying you need to have a lifted vehicle to tackle this road. You can do it in a Corolla, you can do it in a Prius, you can do it in a Tesla if you want, but then why would you want to do that? Because at certain parts of the road, there are ruts in the road, there are undulations in the road that can damage the under panel of your car. It can damage your muffler, you can damage your underbody components, and you really don't want to get stuck here off-road in a passenger car, because the tow out to get you back out to civilization, if you want to call it, is going to be pretty expensive. So I would recommend having a lifted car or some car that has, some ground clearance to it. Not so much lifted, but the real word I'm looking for is really ground clearance. As far as the capabilities of your car, do you need a car with four-wheel drive? Do you need like a Land Rover, Land Cruiser, Jeep, whatever? You can do this in a two-wheel drive, a front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive car or SUV. There isn't much articulation and need for skid plate and rock sliders and all the fancy stuff that a lot of the off-roaders tend to put on their cars to prepare themselves for some of the more extreme, off-roading, so to speak. You can do this in a car that has front wheel, rear wheel, or all-wheel drive if you want four-wheel drive pretty easily. If the ground is dry, I think you can do it all the way with front wheel drive. I did it in rear wheel drive in my Trailblazer end to end, including the water crossing. Front wheel drive, I don't know. You might be able to do it. I probably wouldn't be that much different from doing it with a rear wheel drive car. But again, if there is precipitation and the ground is wet and it is muddy, I think you might find yourself being challenged to get traction with a front wheel or rear wheel drive car. I think you may get stuck and might need to be recovered if you try anything beyond a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicle if the ground is wet. If it's dry, I think you can do it. I did it in end-to-end, as I said, with my Trailblazer. That was rear-wheel drive. Even though I did have four-wheel drive capability, I can flip it into four high, four low. I didn't have to do that because the ground was pretty wet. There was some mud in spots, but it didn't really pose much of a challenge. If you are attempting this in a four-wheel drive vehicle like a Jeep Wrangler or Jeep Cherokee, Toyota Tacoma, Toyota 4Runner, you can do it end-to-end in two high, really two-wheel drive highway mode. If it is wet on the trail and the ground is muddy, so to speak, you would definitely need to put it like in four high, so at least you have traction to all four wheels to make it. I think you would make it most of the way in rear wheel drive if there is moisture on the ground, but there may be some parts where you definitely need to engage at a minimum four high to get to the other end of the trail. Yeah, this is gnarly. Yeah, I think this would be the challenge. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I have no idea. We came through well, that's the front, but then the Tallulah Road is on the other side. The creek is on the other side. Yeah. Into the dirt.
Well, I'm not going to break my dog off. Don't fuck. Come on. His bottom. You can make it a smidge.
In the name of transparency, I need to kind of explain what happened in the clips before with both the Subi, the lifted Subi on a 2-inch lift, as well as the ML 350 SUVs. We did not go off-roading at this hill. We were just inspecting it, looking at it, talking through, how someone could have attacked that hill. And then we just positioned those two cars just for the camera. So they didn't go from end to end over it. They just went up to that last spot, and then they kind of just came down whilst we videotaped it. So that was just more performance for the cameras. But we could have done it. We could have gone over that hill and, completed it with no problems. The reason we didn't do it is there are signs along the trail that warn you not to do off-roading and that there could be fines. And the reason for those signs is, people with their vehicles, whether depending on the kind of tire you have and kind of setup you have, if you go off the trail, you can cause a lot of damage to, the area around the road. And when you damage the area outside of the road itself, you can cause like ecological problems. You can increase the amount of erosion. So when it rains and these areas have been exposed, all the ground cover have been beaten up and removed, then you find those areas start to erode, and it erodes into the road, and you can have sand being deposited in areas that it shouldn't be. So yeah, those signs are kind of to keep you on the main road, to preserve everything around so that we don't best beat up all of the areas. But as you were driving along, you can look and see places where people had gone off-road, taken their trucks off-road to be adventurous. We tried to stay to the Charlie's Creek Road itself and, not add to the damage or, cause a problem. And one of the things I like to think of whenever I go off-roading is you got to drive your car back home. And if you were to go off-roading to a situation that you're not familiar with and cause some damage to your car that caused yourself to be stranded, first off, we didn't have tools to do roadside repairs. We didn't carry a toolbox or anything. We didn't have spare parts. We didn't have axles and upper control arms, lower control arms that people who really do off-roading, and follow the spirit of off-roading would typically carry with them. So we had none of that stuff. And yeah, it would have been nice to go, crawl through mud in some of the areas that other people had gone before, but we wanted to just respect it and not cause any unnecessary damage to the environment as well to our cars. But as you can see, as you continue driving up, there will be some small water crossings before we get to the creek itself. These water crossings are like small, so not much of a challenge to a car with some ground clearance, good tires. Yeah, to talk about tires, most of us had all-terrains, and maybe one person might have had mud terrain on his car. So we were prepared to deal with, some adverse conditions. All of our cars had four-wheel drive capabilities. I wasn't too high at this point. I really didn't need to go into 4-high or 4-low. My Toyota 4Runner has the capability to go into 4-high and 4-low and rock crawl and, all these different modes and stuff. We didn't have to fiddle with any of that stuff. You just get in, drive. The ground was dry, no drama to it. And you can drive end to end in 2-high. And one of the things you got to be prepared for is you will encounter other cars as you drive along the road, either coming towards you or being in front of you. It is a public road in a sense, and people just like us were out, exploring for that day. So yeah, we did run into a lot of different cars, coming our way. There were people camping out, and there were times where we had to pull over to let people pass by because this road was like, it's really like a single lane, but you could make two cars pass by. I mean, we weren't going, like super slow. We weren't rock crawling like 6 to 10 miles per hour. We were moving at a pretty good clip. I think at times I was anywhere between 10 to 20 miles per hour. And yeah, didn't have any problems with traction or slippage or anything like that. There were times I'd have to slow down, because as you drive over some of these hills or whatever, the visibility on the other side wasn't that great. So yeah, as you get to the crest of the hill, you want to kind of slow down just to make sure that you see where you're placing yourself. If there are cars coming toward you, if there are like traffic jams in front of you, like people trying to pass each other, and just be aware of what you're driving into rather than just sending it over a hill. And you also need to be aware that people who are driving on the road may not have off-road experience, to say the least. They're more sightseers, testing out the capabilities of their cars for the first time. So you need to just be conscious and aware that, someone around you might not have the skill level of an experienced off-roader. Just be patient with them. I'm not an experienced off-roader. I mean, I've only been on off-road situations just a few times in my life. It's not something I do every weekend. It's just something I do once in a while. And I also don't test my limits. I just go as far as I can comfortably go without destroying or damaging the bank skull, as I call my truck. Since they really own it and I'm just paying them for it, I want to make sure that I keep it looking kind of decent for as long as possible. So as to kind of talk through the cars in our little convoy, so to speak, I was in a 2019 Toyota 4Runner, and then some of my buds, one was in an ML 350 Mercedes, the other was in a Subaru Forester maybe. We also had a Ram 1500, and we had a GMC truck, the red GMC truck that was beautifully done, the red wheels and the red and silver accents, driven by my buddy Brian, who goes by the name Bodacious on Instagram. We had a pretty good mix of cars, and then my other friend Zach had his really nice blue Toyota 4Runner. He's been off-roading a lot more than I have, and he's been camping and doing all that fancy stuff with his truck. So these guys, I mean, all of the cars had off-road capability. By no means am I going to say we're experts. Some of us have done more adventurous things than others, but for the most part, we're novices. I'd like to use that word as opposed to saying we're experts. And you don't need to be an expert to drive Charlie's Creek. As you can see, we haven't encountered any obstacle yet that would require us to go into 4 high or 4 low and scrape our skid plates and have the need for rock sliders and anything like that. So it's a pretty mild road. It's rated as moderate in most off-road guides. I would say it's between easy and moderate. It's not a very difficult road for anyone to tackle. It's pretty shallow today.
I mean, you can see the rock. No, that's not deep.
It's not deep.
Yeah, it's not deep.
It's not deep.
So you just go wait here like a... No, why you go here? Oh, and then...
Yeah, I think it's where those 2 trees are. and then you make a left, and it should take you.
So all the way down there?
Uh,
Hook to the left.
yeah, so go down, and I think it's between those two trees,
Okay.
and then you just hook a left. It's not that bad.
This is right between that toe to the left. So put you on that road over there.
Is it cold?
Wait, so left of that.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
right over that stump.
All right. Hi, Brian. What's the sit rep?
Okay, so up to like really cool. After that little log, it's like,
Yeah.
we can probably find a little bit of water.
Oh my God. It's only water.
Water is driving computers through.
But you can see we were pretty excited to cross Charlie's Creek. And I think with the exception of myself and Zach with the blue 4Runner, nobody else had visited this trail, if we want to call it a trail, before. So before just driving through the water and not knowing what we're getting ourselves into, we stopped, checked out the river, kind of figured out where our entry and exit points were, and yeah, it was fun to kind of rip the guys, make it seem a little more difficult than it is. But it was pretty exciting to drive through if you've never done a water crossing before. Some of the rules that we kind of took to heart was, not stopping in the river for photos or anything like that. We did have a drone with us. My buddy Eric had his drone out, and he took some drone photos. But yeah, we didn't stop in the water and pose or do anything to cause damage. We just got in, drove through, and got out on the other side. So once we were done with the initial river crossing, we did the river crossing in the opposite direction from which we came, so that we could at least drive Charlie's Creek in the opposite direction. And we also wanted to check out a campground that was off of Charlie's Creek. So we had passed it on the way in, and I kind of forgot the entrance to it. And one of the guys that I had spoken to in one of the jeeps that we had passed reminded me of the campground. So we went back over the river crossing. Again, fun to do, not very dramatic. The water level was pretty low, so there was really no risk of us getting stranded or anything like this. Good grief. It's like a little river thing. Oh yeah. And you can see someone kind of got stuck. There's even tire tracks down here. What in the world? Like how the hell? Unless you come up this. Wow. Yeah. How's the Subi hanging on? Good, good. So this is where we get to the last two things I wanted to talk about. You know, how was it driving across Charlie's Creek Road, and will I do it again? And the answer is, it was pretty simple. You don't need to be an expert. Beginner level off-roaders can do this. There's no need for any fancy off-road equipment. You just need a vehicle with some ground clearance. By all means, you can do a Prius or a Corolla if you want to, but you're taking a risk with a car that doesn't have ground clearance. You really don't need a lot of 4x4 capability. You can do it in two-wheel drive and you'll be fine if the ground is dry. If it is wet, then I think you might want to at least have the ability to go into 4-high, so at least you have 4 wheels spinning. Will I do it again? Yeah, I'll do it again. So thank you for checking out the video. If you stayed with us this long, click like on the video. Please subscribe to the channel so you can kind of keep up with any other content that we put out. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.